It looked like any other pen, old, unused, forgotten. But the moment he held it, he felt it searching for something inside him, and it found more than ink. Elias loved antique stores, not the curated, overpriced boutiques that smelled of lavender and pretension, but the dusty, cluttered labyrinths where forgotten histories whispered from every shelf. He sought the overlooked, the genuinely old, the items that carried the faint, lingering scent of lives lived and stories untold. He was in one such establishment, a place aptly named Curio and Coil, its windows perpetually fogged with age and neglect, that he found it, nestled amongst tarnished silver thimbles and cracked porcelain dolls. In a velvet-lined box that seemed too grand for its contents, lay the pen. It wasn't particularly ornate, nor did it gleam with any precious metals. It was a simple, old-fashioned fountain pen, its barrel a deep, polished ebony, its nib a dull, almost black, metallic point. What drew Elias to it was an inexplicable pull, a subtle hum that seemed to resonate just beneath his skin. He picked it up, and a strange warmth spread through his fingers, a warmth that felt both comforting and oddly invasive. The shop owner, a wizened man with eyes that seemed to have seen too much, merely grunted when Elias presented it. "Ah, that one," he rasped, his gaze lingering on the pen for a moment too long. Never could get it to write. Stubborn thing. He named a price so ridiculously low that Elias almost suspected a trick, but the old man simply shrugged, took the crumpled bills, and turned back to his dusty ledgers, leaving Elias with his peculiar find and a faint, unsettling feeling that he hadn't just bought a pen, but had been chosen by it. Back in his small apartment, filled with his own collection of rescued oddities, Elias examined the pen more closely. It was heavier than it looked, perfectly balanced, and felt strangely alive in his hand. He dipped the nib into a fresh bottle of black ink, the kind he usually reserved for his more serious writing. His short story, his attempts at poetry. He touched the nib to a blank sheet of paper, expecting the usual smooth flow. Instead, nothing. The old man had been right. It wouldn't write. Frustration pricked at him. He tried again, pressing harder, then lighter, then at different angles. Still nothing. Just a faint, almost imperceptible tremor that ran from the pen up his arm and into his chest. He set it down, a flicker of disappointment mingling with the lingering sense of its strange allure. He'd try again tomorrow. Perhaps it just needed to be coaxed. Perhaps it needed to choose its words and its writer more carefully. Days turned into a week. The pen sat on Elias's desk, a silent, obsidian sentinel. He'd pick it up occasionally, driven by that inexplicable pull. Each time, the same result. No ink, and try to write. Just that subtle, unsettling tremor. But then, things began to change. He'd wake in the middle of the night, a strange, cold sweat clinging to him, with a single, vivid phrase echoing in his mind. Not his own thoughts, but something alien, compelling. The shadows' hunger, or their whispers' guide. He'd shake it off, attributing it to a vivid dream. But the phrases persisted, growing more frequent, more insistent. Then came the dreams. Not his usual chaotic narratives, but coherent, terrifying visions. He'd find himself in a vast, echoing chamber, the air thick with the scent of ozone and decay. Figures, indistinct and shadowy, would writhe in the periphery, their forms shifting, their voices a cacophony of screams and pleas, and always, at the center, a single, glowing point of light, pulsating with a dark energy, drawing him closer. He'd wake with a gasp, the images seared into his mind, and the first thing he'd see was the pen, sitting innocently on his desk, internal light of its own. The pen's influence began to seep into his waking hours. He'd be working on his laptop or reading a book, and his hand would twitch, his fingers aching to hold the pen. He'd find himself staring at blank pages, a strange compulsion building within him to just write. He tried to ignore it, to dismiss it as a side effect of his overactive imagination. But the urge grew stronger, a relentless pressure behind his eyes, a dull ache in his wrist. He started to notice small, unsettling details. The way the air around the pen seemed to shimmer faintly, the way his reflection in its polished surface seemed to twist and distort, just for a second, into something not quite human. One evening, while trying to sketch in his notebook, his hand, seemingly of its own accord, reached for the ebony pen. He felt a jolt, a surge of cold energy, as his fingers closed around it. This time, when he touched the nib to the paper, a thin, black line appeared. Not ink, not exactly. It was too dark to almost like liquid shadow, and his hand, no longer his own, began to move. It wasn't writing words he knew, or even a language he recognized. It was a series of intricate, swirling symbols, ancient and unsettling, that seemed to throb with a malevolent life of their own. A cold dread seeped into his bones. He tried to stop, to pull his hand away, but it was locked, rigid, compelled by an unseen force. The symbols flowed from the pen, filling the page, each stroke a deeper plunge into a terrifying abyss. He could feel something trying to push its way into his mind, a cold, alien presence, seeking purchase, seeking control. He was writing, but he wasn't the author. He was merely the vessel, and the story it was writing, he realized with a horrifying clarity, was his own. The symbols multiplied, crawling across the page like a living infestation. Elias watched in horror as his hand, still firmly gripped by the pen, moved with a speed and precision that was utterly alien to him. He could feel the entity, whatever it was, pressing against the fragile walls of his consciousness, a cold, insidious tendril seeking entry. It wasn't just writing, it was etching itself into his very being. A searing pain shot through his wrist, then up his arm, as if the ink itself was burning him from the inside out. He tried to scream, but his throat was constricted, his voice stolen. His eyes darted around the room, desperate for an escape, a distraction, anything to break the pen's terrifying hold. He saw his reflection in the dark, polished surface of the pen, but it wasn't his face staring back. It was a distorted, elongated its eyes glowing with an unnatural, malevolent light, its mouth stretched into a silent, predatory grin. The entity was already there, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for its moment. The symbols on the page began to glow faintly, pulsing with a dark, rhythmic beat that mirrored the frantic pounding of his heart. He could hear whispers now, not in his mind, but emanating from the pen itself, a chorus of ancient, guttural voices chanting in a language that twisted his sanity. They were urging him on, demanding completion, to fling it across the room, demanding his surrender. He fought back, a desperate, primal struggle against an overwhelming force. He tried to drop the pen, but his fingers were locked, fused to the ebony barrel. He slammed his hand against the desk, against his leg, anything to dislodge it, but it clung to him like a parasite. The pain intensified, a white-hot agony that threatened to consume him. He felt his own thoughts, his own memories, being replaced by a flood of alien knowledge, swirling vortex that seemed to draw all the light from the room, of dark rituals and forgotten horrors. He was losing himself. Piece by agonizing piece, the final symbol on the page began to form, a complex, leaving only a suffocating darkness. He knew, with a terrifying certainty, that once that symbol was complete, he would be gone. His mind, his soul, would be nothing more than an empty vessel, a puppet for the entity that had chosen him. With a final, desperate surge of will, Elias focused on a single thought, his name, defiant act. Elias. He clung to it, a fragile anchor in the storm of encroaching darkness. He wouldn't let it take him. He channeled every ounce of his remaining strength, not into fighting the pen, but into a single. He bit down, hard, on his own thumb, drawing blood. The pain was a shock to the system, a jolt of pure, unadulterated agony that momentarily severed the connection. The pen shuddered, its dark glow flickering. His fingers, slick with his own blood, finally loosened. The pen clattered to the desk, rolling once, then settling, its nib pointing accusingly at the final, incomplete symbol on the page. Elias gasped, sucking in air, his body racked with tremors. He stared at his hand, at the deep crescent mark on his thumb, at the faint, lingering imprint of the pen's barrel on his skin. He looked at the page, at the swirling, malevolent symbols, and at the last unfinished one. It was so close to completion, too close. He snatched up the pen again, not to write, but to destroy. He tried to snap it, to crush it, to break it against the desk, but it was impossibly strong, unyielding. He could feel its faint, insistent hum, a whisper of its dark will, trying to reassert its control. He knew he couldn't keep it. He couldn't even keep it in his apartment. He wrapped the pen in a thick cloth, then in several layers of plastic, as if trying to contain a living, breathing thing. He drove for hours, through the pre-dawn darkness, until he found a deserted stretch of highway, far from any town or light. Murky river, its surface black and still. With a grunt of effort, or so he told himself, he hurled the wrapped pen into the deepest part of the water, watching as the ripples spread, then vanished, leaving no trace. He drove home, the silence of his car, a welcome balm after the cacophony of whispers. He felt drained, hollowed out, but alive. He had fought, and he had won, or so he told himself. Weeks passed. Elias tried to return to his normal life, to his writing, to his quiet routines, but the dreams lingered. Though less vivid, less frequent, the phantom ache in his wrist would sometimes return, a ghostly echo of the pen's grip. And sometimes, late at night, when the house was silent and the shadows stretched long, he would swear he could hear it, a faint, almost imperceptible scratching sound, like a nib on paper, coming from somewhere deep beneath the earth. Writing, always writing, waiting for its next story. And he knew, with a chilling certainty, that some stories, once started, can never truly be erased.